going. Hi, welcome to the COVID-19 Lake Norman and North Mecklenburg briefing call. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd of 2020. My name is John Bradford. I am your briefing call moderator. I'm a small business owner, 2 businesses right here in North Mecklenburg. And I'm also a former member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, and it's my pleasure to run these calls. The purpose of these calls is to bring together healthcare experts, government officials, and business leaders to provide regular COVID briefing updates to help educate and support the North Mecklenburg region during the outbreak. We are still under President Trump's social distancing requirement through April 30th, and as you can see from on your screen, social distancing does work, and this graphic sort of explains without words. So please be smart and social distance. Yesterday, the White House and the CDC sent out guidelines called Opening Up America Again. So President Trump has unveiled some high-level guidelines for opening up America again. It's a 3-phased approach based on the advice of public health experts. The steps are going to help state and local officials when reopening their economies, getting people back to work, and continuing to protect American lives. There is a sort of a 3-phased approach of symptoms, cases, and hospitals. But the symptoms, looking like a downward trajectory across a 14-day period. Same thing with cases. And so just know that the CDC and the White House have put some guidelines out there for states to start watching. The bottom line is just making sure that we're seeing trending going down across a 14-day period. But it is promising to see this kind of guidelines opening up America again to be released. The United States Senate passed a $484 billion additional coronavirus stimulus package. You may say, what's in this package? $320 billion additional dollars for the Payroll Protection Program, known as the PPP, $60 billion for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, sometimes I hear it referred to as EIDL, $75 billion to hospitals and healthcare providers, $25 billion for state-level COVID testing and research. Of course, the bill's got to move now through the House of Representatives, but we do have a bill on the move. This is interesting. LabCorp, one of our companies right here in North Carolina, received FDA approval for an at-home coronavirus test kit. So basically, LabCorp, North Carolina-based company, is going to start selling an at-home testing kit for the COVID-19 virus. And this is after receiving emergency authorization from the Food and Drug Administration. If everybody could go on mute, that would be great. We got some background noise. The name of the test is called Pixel. It's going to cost $119, and it will include a collection of specimens via nasal swabs. And the test is going to be marketed to healthcare providers and first responders. And consumers will only be able to buy the test if it's recommended by a provider and after they have filled out a questionnaire. So what's interesting here is we do have FDA approval of an at-home test, which I thought was interesting news. Just in the spirit of testing, there's a Self Checker at the CDC website, and Apple and the CDC have a site at apple.com/COVID-19. If you need any face cloth coverings, you can order it from Endera Mills, shop.enderamills.com. We're at 776,000 cases in the U.S. with 41,000 deaths. This was as of yesterday. North Carolina is not one of the darker states, as you can see from this heat map. We're about somewhere in the middle. And then rumor control, FEMA. There's a new rumor out there about FEMA is suspending rent for people in certain states. And the answer is, if you live in FEMA housing in California, Florida, North Carolina, and Texas, then they are suspending rent for disaster survivors. So if you live in FEMA housing and you're in California, Florida, North Carolina, and Texas, then you need to go to the FEMA website and see if you qualify. But again, you must live in FEMA housing, so I just wanted to share that rumor with you and that information since it was new. We're under a state of emergency here still in North Carolina. The number of cases is now 7,220, 242 deaths. That's up from 179 deaths as of our last call, which was Monday. And the hospitalizations had gone down. It looks like now they've trickled back up a little bit. We're at 434 hospitalized compared to 373 on Wednesday. We are still holding at 93 counties impacted. So that number has stayed the same for exactly 1 week. So we have not had any more cases in these last 7 counties. So 93 counties out of 100. There was a new executive order issued yesterday, Executive Order 134. It allows furloughed employees that received a severance package to still be eligible for unemployment benefits. So just if you are furloughed and you got a severance package, you are now eligible for unemployment under the new executive order. And we, of course, in North Carolina are still at a stay-at-home order until the end of the month. We need healthcare volunteers. Volunteer, here's the website to go to, and here's the state unemployment benefit website as well. Mecklenburg County data, 1,255 positive cases, 32 deaths. And Mecklenburg County has aligned their order with the state's order. And Mecklenburg County parks are still closed to vehicle traffic, but walk-ins and bicycles are still permissible. So the parks are open if you're on foot or on a bicycle. And from a heat map, still the kind of the same data from the last call, 36 to 49 cases in Huntersville, 20 to 35 in Cornelius, 5 to 20 in Davidson. But if you look at the population of each of those towns, it's pretty similar percentage-wise. So let's get to our panelists. We have the United States Small Business Administration, the North Carolina Director, Mr. Thomas Stith, is with us today. He joins us every Wednesday. Mr. Stith, there's obviously some hopeful new money coming for the PPP and for the EIDL, so we'd love to hear any updates you may have to share with us.
Yes, John, I appreciate the opportunity to speak again today, and you're correct. Obviously, the U.S. Senate passed the next round of funding through their legislative action, and we currently are waiting for the U.S. Congress. Potentially over $300 billion, as you outlined, for additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. $60 billion of that funding there is structured toward CDFIs, smaller credit unions. Some of the feedback from the initial round of funding was ensuring that small businesses of all sizes had access. And so at least in the Senate version, there was language trying to address that. In addition to additional Paycheck Protection Program funding being considered in Congress as we speak, the EIDL, or the Economic Injury Advance loan, along with the full Economic Injury Disaster Loan, a potential $6 billion of funding, with $10 billion going toward the Emergency Advance and $50 billion toward the full Economic Injury Disaster Loan. As we know, there have been significant response. I thought it might be helpful, and this was data from the SBA headquarters earlier this week, that of the Economic Injury Disaster Loans nationally, almost 27,000 loans have been approved. That translates into about $5.6 billion. In North Carolina, approximately 763 loans, translating into $147 million worth of funding. On the advanced portion, that's the portion that you can request as your EIDL is being considered. That's in the form of a grant. Nationally, 775,000 have been approved, translating into almost $3.3 billion. Here in North Carolina, almost 20,000 advances have been approved, translating into $88 million. And as we had mentioned earlier, with the exhaustion of the PPP, nationally, 1.6 million loans approved, and here in North Carolina, almost 40,000 with $8 billion. So while there's been significant progress and significant economic support for small business, there is still a tremendous need, and we wait with anticipation for U.S. Congress, now that the U.S. Senate has passed, to pass additional funding. Many questions now, what's next? In particular with the Paycheck Protection Program, I would encourage small businesses and nonprofits to talk with their lenders, in particular if they had submitted an application as the funding for that initiative was exhausted, to determine from their lender and to get an assessment, will there be a potential for them the lender to submit that loan to SBA? Because as we know, with the Paycheck Protection Program, SBA is receiving these loan requests from the lender. We're providing 100% guarantee. So during this time, and the anticipation, it will be within the next day, probably tomorrow for the final vote, but within the next day or so, legislation would have passed. But we're encouraging small businesses to talk to their lender now, and particularly if they have submitted, and assess whether that lender feels that they will be submitting their application or loan to SBA. If not, as I've said on previous calls, our district office has a web presence with a listing of other alternative lenders that are SBA approved, because as we know, this funding, the initial trough was approximately 14 days, was depleted. So we imagine that that same demand is going to be there, and now is the time to utilize, time to prepare. So talk to your current lender and look at other options if you don't think that's going to be a potential. So John, that's a overview of kind of how we got to where we are today with the expenditure of fundings and the potential for another round of significant funding for both economic injury disaster loan and grant associated with that, and our Paycheck Protection Initiative.
So Director Stith, just to re-summarize, if a business has submitted their, let's talk about the PPP for a moment. If they've submitted their application to their lender and they did not get money in the first round, and they're having trouble getting their lender to respond to them, because some of these lenders are large and they're getting in long wait queues. Would it be advised to perhaps look at other banks in their area that might be able to, that they can get a hold of and try to resubmit? I mean, would that be good guidance until someone acknowledges that it's getting submitted?
I think given the timeline, the answer to that is yes, because you can only qualify with one bank if your current bank has not been responsive for, and you're right, I mean, we're all meeting tremendous needs of response. If they go to another lender and that lender submits their application, only one can be approved. So you can submit it more than one institution. If you're approved at one, you can withdraw from the other institution, or it will not allow for two loans to be issued. So if a small business is not getting a response from a lending institution that they originally applied for, I would encourage them to look at other options.
Okay, yeah, that's very good. I think the magic terminology, I believe, is they are waiting for some sort of E-Trans number or some sort of PLP number, so that way they know it's truly been submitted, and they should be waiting on something like a reservation, correct?
Correct, and that would be the determining factor if the loan has actually been approved or submitted and been approved by SBA.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, those are very helpful updates. We enjoy having you on every Wednesday. I know you're very busy, and we have our fingers crossed that this bill will move through the House of Representatives, and because I know there's a lot of business owners that still need the help. So thank you for your leadership and what you're doing for North Carolina. Much appreciated, Director Stith. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You bet. Now we're going to Mecklenburg County. Commissioner Pat Cotham. Commissioner Cotham, I'd love to hear an update from you in the county, please.
Thank you, and I enjoy hearing Mr. Stith as well. There's been a lot, today I want to talk about some things that just kind of come to light in the last 24 hours. So I want to talk a little bit about to give you some updates on the two loan programs that the county has. One was for $5 million or so, and they had hoped to have 140 loans from that, and it ends up, it looks like they have like 200. I was not supportive of this because I did not like the way it was structured. The county was paying $1 million to this nonprofit to administer these loans, and I thought that for $5 million, $1 million was just extreme. I couldn't do that, and I also didn't think it was enough money for the 30,000 businesses we have. We can't help everybody, but I think we could have tried to help more than that number. But nevertheless, they had 268 applications, and the average loan requested was close to $26,000. And of that money, it would have been, for most companies, like $13,000 plus for payroll, $7,600 for mortgage or lease costs, $2,600 for utilities, $2,000 for equipment financing. It was that kind of money. The people who were requesting the money in the county were 54% white, 25% African American, 8% Asian, 8% other. 42% of them were female, and so I think it's likely that more money will be added to that fund. We have another fund that should be of interest to North Mecklenburg, that it was just for the 5 of the 6 towns. I don't know why Mint Hill was excluded, but and it did not include the city of Charlotte. And this was $500,000 that was for really micro businesses that had, I think it was under 10 employees. And and of these, I have the numbers from how many, for this, 14 businesses in Huntersville applied, 11 businesses in Cornelius applied, 0 in Davidson, and 1 in Pineville, and 3 in Matthews. So just to kind of give you an idea of what that is. And again, I think that, that we'll probably, and I did support this one. I didn't support the other one. Let me go back to the other one, because there's a story that just posted today. I guess it'll be in the newspaper tomorrow. I mentioned that there was a nonprofit that was administering the loans for $1 million, and I did not, again, support that. And but the Observer has written a story that talks about this nonprofit having some financial problems in their audit, and I won't go into too detail, but you can find it online. The reporter was Austin Weinstein, I think his name is, but that'll probably be in the paper tomorrow. So that's certainly going to be, I'm sure, a topic of discussion among the commissioners. Let me see. I think that's, I don't want to go over my time. Okay, one last thing that I learned today, and I really didn't know this, and maybe our mayors on the call did know this, but the county, when they did that shutdown, they could not have done it for the whole county without the support of the 6 towns in the city of Charlotte. The county does not have the authority to do that, and so we kind of had probed that at our last meeting, and then I just got this update from the county. Well, it was from our attorney that talks about that. So I'm sure this is going to be a bigger topic of discussion in the days ahead, because as we look at, and I know the county manager is assembling a business roundtable to look at, what a reopen of some sort would look like and how would we do that and whatever. But I certainly didn't know, and maybe, again, I'm curious what our mayors say, but I certainly didn't know, and I don't think the public understood that either, that they had to have, it had to be everybody in agreement on that. So I guess that means that, I don't know if that, I assume that means that the mayors, could do something individual for their town. So, but again, more information will come out on that in the days ahead. I just found this out, a few hours ago. So anyway, that's my update from Mecklenburg County.
All right. Thank you so much, Pat, for always joining, and you're much appreciated. So moving to the town of Cornelius, we have Mayor Woody Washa. Mayor, are you on the phone? If so, the mic is yours. Is anyone from Cornelius on the phone today? Before I move to Huntersville. Okay, let's move on.
John, I'm here. I'm sorry. Hey, John, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Sorry, Mayor. Yeah, go ahead. The mic's yours.
I'm sorry. I was driving and had difficulty getting you off of mute. So
nope, no problem.
Yeah, let me follow up. Let me follow up just a bit with what Pat was saying. I do believe that we have the authority, or we would have had the authority to do our own emergency order, but because we're a part of the Mecklenburg County Emergency organization, if you will, we had granted them authority to run this and other emergency programs for us. So we had pretty much granted them that authority as the county has, and that's why this emergency task force is making those kinds of decisions. However, with that said, you know, the reaction to the emergency task force to some of the requests we've had has been pretty good. Our work with the car dealerships went well, and I think they listened to us, and we were impacted here in Huntersville and Cornelius with some pretty demanding requests to get that relieved, and it was. But the other thing that we're concerned about now is the county parks that are part of our town. We have 3 county parks: Ramsey Creek, Blythe Landing, and Jatun Park in our town. So a lot of dialogue coming from our commissioners and the public about the fact that folks can't park in those parks right now. They can use the parks, but they just can't park there. Well, what that's creating is massive parking problems in our nearby neighborhoods, because that's where people are parking. They're continuing to go to the parks, probably on a little lesser degree, but the impact of parking is a problem. So we're having some dialogue with the county emergency group through our town manager to try to get us some relief from that. The other thing that we're having some dialogue about is the opening of the boat launch. You know, there's no way you can really say that boat launch activities are compromising the social distancing, because there's a lot of space in between when you go launch your boat till the next one can pull in. So we would like to see that reopened as well. And I think it's important right now to provide some relief. I think our citizens, and I think I can speak for others in our region, are getting a little antsy, if you will. Total understanding about why this is in place, and I think there's been a lot of patience going on, but patience is running a little bit thin. So, you know, we really have to, I think, provide some appropriate relief that's safe for our population, and we're making those requests as we move forward. So just wanted to throw that in as it relates to some of the topic of Commissioner Pat. You know, one of the things that we do have coming up, I think it's May 4th, is our next virtual Connecting Cornelius meeting. We will be hosting it again on Zoom, and we will have representation from our town and our county, and at least to get an update, a little quicker update this time, and have the opportunity to have some open dialogue through some email questions and so forth related to these kinds of activities and concerns in Cornelius related to the emergency order. So that'll be coming up on May 4th. In addition to that, you know, we've got the honor of kicking off Small Business Week as part of our Connecting Cornelius event. Awfully important we don't forget our small businesses right now. It's so critical to keep them afloat, to keep them moving forward, and I'm excited that Lake Norman Chamber gave us the opportunity to do that at our Connecting Cornelius on May 4th. So that kicks off the entire week, and we hope that everybody will join us for that, and you can again tune in on Zoom, and I think it'll be a good update for everybody and a good celebration for our small businesses throughout our town and our region. And I think that's probably the only updates I have today. John, thank you.
No, you bet, Mayor. I think great update. Thank you so much. Moving to the town of Huntersville, we have Huntersville Mayor John Annarella. Mayor, the microphone's yours.
Oh, hey, John, and I want to reiterate some of the points that have been made recently. Don't see why boat ramps can't be open and the parks can't be driven to. But in Huntersville, you can drive to our parks. Just keep your distance from others and don't congregate and play a 5-on-5 basketball game or a 10-on-10 soccer or 11-on-11 soccer match. I'll talk a little bit about the opening of our economy. This has been something I've been talking to some of the mayors about, some of the governor's representative, and numerous others for at least the last 2 weeks. And I think we are getting some movement, but my biggest concern right now is come April 29th, there isn't a plan in place. So there is going to be a discussion on Friday morning at 8:30. Representatives of the towns as well as the county and hospital systems will be on to talk about what it looks like to open. I will tell you that I, for a while, have felt it's inherently unfair that the retailers that are closed, who compete with much larger retailers on what is now deemed non-essential items, continue to be closed. And I think a good first step would be to allow those retailers to open under the governor's guidelines, the social distancing guidelines put out there about a week and a half ago, and not only let them compete, but even think about the alternatives that people have. Right now, you only can go to certain stores, so we're all congregating at these large big box stores, and I think a lot of people will feel more comfortable going to some of the smaller retailers if they are allowed to be open. In addition, I think we talked about this last week about on Monday about the exemptions that people are getting. And just this morning, I received 2 small business owners in Huntersville that received these exemptions, but what they don't realize that Mecklenburg County is under stronger, stricter rules, and they technically, even though the North Carolina Department of Revenue have stated they can open, within Mecklenburg County, they can't. So we're now creating another set of hurdles for our small business owners and inconsistencies throughout the state. And then just recently, I read that Gastonia is thinking about opening up next week. So you want to create a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of confusion if we're not consistent throughout the state come April 29th, 30th. So I will definitely support opening up in some type of limited basis to just start getting the economy moving forward. And then finally, I just want to say shout out to McDonald's. They are offering a free breakfast meal for all first responders, including hospital workers that present their ID or badge. And locally, it continues to amaze me how many of our restaurants are still offering free food to our first responders and healthcare workers. It's just an amazing thing. So John, that's all I have, but I think this next few days is going to be pretty much a defining moment in Mecklenburg County and North Carolina for how we move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and a lot of your comments I agree with. I had people are emailing me because of these calls, and someone is a massage therapist, and they have a letter from the Department of Revenue says they can open, but then there's conflict with the county, and the restrictive order is what sort of rules, and so that does create additional confusion. So anyway, hopefully we can get some parity there between them. So thanks for your leadership, John. And that McDonald's, is it the Huntersville McDonald's location, or do you think it's all area McDonald's, or do you know?
It's McDonald's nationally.
Oh, great. Good to know. All right, well, because there's a McDonald's obviously in Cornelius as well. All right, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate your leadership, sir. Moving to the town of Davidson, we have Town Commissioner Matthew Fort. The microphone's yours, Commissioner.
Thanks, John, for having me on. I wanted to make a point of clarification from my the statement that I made the last time I was on the call. So the majority of the parks in the town of Davidson are managed by Mecklenburg County. So as I was referencing the fact that our parks are closed to and for pedestrians only, it's very similar to what Mayor Washam was referencing within Cornelius. So we're under the same policy as Cornelius and I'm assuming Huntersville. So Abersham Park, the park here at Fisher Farm, and even off of June Washam and Shearer Road, the greenway there is closed for parking. Although we are, to Mayor Washam's point, still seeing parking on the side of the road, but those are under the order of Mecklenburg County, not a specific policy decision that the town of Davidson has made. So I wanted to make sure that I cleared that up. No other real updates. I would say that I probably am a little bit more hesitant to reopen. I understand how everybody feels, and I think we want to make sure that we do get the economy up and going. But the one thing I would caution us, and what I would hate to avoid is that we open up for 2 weeks and then we're closed back down for another 3 months because the disease spread again. So I'd rather urge patience and make sure that we're coming back at the right time so that we're not in this for the rest of the year. So that's all I have from an update standpoint.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, you bet. No, thank you, Commissioner Fort, for joining, and thanks for the clarity on the park situation. So there were no updates. CMS is getting close to adjourning. I think on some schools, if not already. So no updates here from Rhonda Lennon. And then we have, or Rhonda Cheek, excuse me. And then we have Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce CEO Bill Russell. Mr. Russell, the mic's yours, sir.
Thank you, John. As Mayor Annarella just alluded to in terms of easing back into business, we have a task force meeting today on a conference call at 3 o'clock to be again talking about responsible reentry. We actually put something about responsible reentry on our website yesterday at lakenormanchamber.org. But again, we have a number of stakeholders in the healthcare industry, corporations, diverse marketplace, talking about how we're going to ease back into operations. As Commissioner Fort was just talking about, we need to do so in a safe manner, but there is no question employers, managers, business owners are ready to get back into business, and so we're going to start moving in that direction. Tomorrow, we're going to have our first virtual business after hours. It's not the same thing as when you're able to gather together, but we need to maintain our relationships, and so the Chamber is going to be putting together a Zoomed business after hours virtually. That's at 5:30 to 7, and we have information that went out to our Chamber of Commerce members. Of course, that's again on our website. On Friday, the Chamber is partnering with WSIC. WSIC is a radio station in Statesville that broadcasts from Statesville down to Huntersville at 105.9. We have U.S. Senator Tom Tillis and Jeff Tart, myself, Joe Bagnone, and station owner Mark Sampson. We're going to be interviewing Senator Tillis, who will be sharing some of the facets and features of the bill, which is going before the House now. That's going to be the fourth rendition of assisting businesses through the stimulus money. So again, that's taking place. And as Mayor Washam talked about coming up very shortly, May 4th through the 11th, we had planned a number of activities surrounding supporting our small business community because it's a small business week. Many of those events now will probably be virtual in nature, but we will line up a number of seminars and functions each day that people can attend virtually. Again, everybody's very anxious to getting back into business. There's a lot of information on our website. We encourage you to go there, lakenormanchamber.org. As you know, John, we have 850 Chamber of Commerce members from Huntersville, Davidson, Cornelius, and the greater Lake Norman region. And again, all of those are very anxious to get back in business and get this economy rolling again here at the lake. John, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for everybody involved and their support of our small business and corporate business here in the Lake Norman region.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Bill, and your leadership, and we're pulling for all your members. I'm a member, been a longstanding member of the Chamber of Commerce, so thank you for that, Bill. And just moving along, here's the website for the Huntersville Regional Chamber. We've extended an open invite to them to join our calls, so just want to mention them. And then this is wonderful, Lake Norman, visit Lake Norman, excuse me. They have a virtual tip jar, so Visit Lake Norman has a great idea. You can go to visitlakenorman.org and /restaurants, and you can give a tip. It's a virtual tip, and they feature a randomly selected hospitality worker in the food and beverage industry. And every time you go, there's a new person, and you can give a tip. So it's a great way to try to raise some money for people that typically would get tips, but because we're obviously not physically interacting with them at their locations, this is a great way to do it. Just want to thank, of course, all of our panelists Some come and go as we need them on different days, but from Congressman Greg Murphy, Dr. Jack Faircloth, who couldn't join us today, he was was covering, of course, Director Stiff with the USSBA, Commissioner Pat Cotham, Woody, the Mayor Woody Washam, Mayor John Anarella, Commissioner Fort from Davidson, Rhonda, our CMS board member, has joined a few times, so we appreciate her. And then, of course, Bill Russell's been a mainstay from the Lake Norman Chamber. And again, I'm John Bradford, your moderator. Our next briefing will be Friday, April 24th. We're stronger together. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Send me your emails. A lot of you send me emails, lkntogether@gmail.com. I will respond to every one of them and help you the best way I can, lkntogether@gmail.com. This does conclude our briefing today. Thank you again. Have a great day.